Hello and welcome to the Our Metroidvania podcast. I am Professor Q.
And this is Caldrath from the R Metroidvania Discord and subreddit.
This is Master. I'm also from there.
And today we are trying something different where we are just going to talk over some pre-recorded gameplay, which I had perfectly centered, and for whatever reason it messed up. So I'm sorry for the screen shaking just a little bit. Did you want to say anything about the game before we get started just chatting, Caldrath?
Uh, so I guess this was me playing the game. I guess I can talk about like how Metroidvania it is and things like that.
Sure.
So it is extremely open to start with. There isn't really any ability gating in the first area. And then like the traditional ability gating things that you'd get, like a double jump and air dash, are actually in the skill tree. So I don't think I would actually consider it a Metroidvania.
So the skill trees, doing that type of thing in skill tree is something that's interesting to me. I've always thought that having a Metroidvania with modular powers, like I think we talked about this before, like doing the Quest for Glory thing where there are three solutions to every problem. Doing that in a skill tree style, I think would be kind of interesting, but you're saying it's not necessarily required to have any of that.
Right. Like there's a door that opens when you beat the first boss, and that's how you get to the next area. But the first area is actually fairly big. So there's still a good bit to explore. Like there's actually like 3 biomes or something, like 3 or 4 biomes.
Now, this is still in early access, right?
Yeah, so there's definitely potential for it to change a bit.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they probably just put the Metroidvania label on it just because it has an interconnected world, which happens a lot.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's difficult to explain that doesn't necessarily make it a Metroidvania. And, you know, you constantly have the back and forth, which I think we talk about every single stream because that's half of what talking about Metroidvanias is, I guess.
Yep.
We're talking about Metroidvanias in general.
Gatekeeping.
Yeah, that's us. We're the gatekeepers. Zool or something like that. Or how does everything that goes?
We gatekeep the key gating.
Hey, one of the interesting things about this game is it has a teleport point in the opening town, but it's broken. So, like, and I never actually found the thing that fixes it. So you can't teleport back to town, and the only way that you can upgrade your skills is by going back to town. So it's actually kind of annoying. Like, I'd have like a bunch of skill upgrades that I could get, and then I'd just be like, do I really want to go back all the way back to town to go purchase them?
Yeah, I feel like that if you're going to have a central hub where you have to go in order to like level up and stuff, you kind of need some kind of town portal thing right from the start. There's a reason why Diablo had that. I think.
Well, there are basically scrolls of town portal, but they're one way back to town, and they cost 300 coins or whatever they are in this game, and that is extremely expensive.
I think Chasm did a similar thing where you had the teleport back to town scrolls, but they were extremely rare and/or expensive. It's interesting. I kind of wonder what their thought process is behind that design.
So yeah, you can see like bananas are 20 coins and they recover 1 heart. Oh yeah, that's one of the other things is that you start with only 4 hearts or 3 or 4 hearts, and then you have to use food like all the time to get health back.
That fruit juice is as much as a teleport scroll.
Yeah.
So, like, just thinking about like maybe why you would design it this way, there is a certain amount of tension keeping you in the dungeon, um, especially if you have some kind of death mechanic where you're kind of gambling your resources the longer you stay there. But I don't know. There's also just it's tedious to walk back to town all the time. The factor that makes me kind of wonder. I guess if you're going to put a mechanic like that into the game, you really should think about why you have it that way. And welcome, Metroidvania.
Oh, yeah,
The
this
thing with hubs in Metroidvanias is that you need to have them like well connected to places. There needs to be, a relatively short path to get back, whether it's because it's centered in the map somewhere or you have some sort of fast travel system.
Yeah, if you're going to have some kind of hub. And welcome, Belfast Belmont.
yeah, this town is in the upper right corner of the map, like far away from everything. And as you'll see later, I actually managed to miss the teleporter that's the closest to town. And also, right next to that teleporter, you get your first magic spell. So I had like explored almost the entire map before I came back and like stumbled upon that one.
Oh,
Oh boy. Yeah, conveying things, mechanics like that is also important. One of the games I'm playing right now doesn't convey anything, so you get lost really easily for kind of the wrong reasons. There's a subtle way to convey that. Playing Super Nintendo, well, technically Super Nintendo, playing Super Metroid again recently kind of really made me appreciate again. I feel like I played it once a year for the last couple of years. Appreciate again just the how much the design kind of leads you places without actually telling you to go places. Comparing that to a couple of other games that I played recently, where you just had this massive, vast world to explore in, with no direction on where to go, which can be rewarding if you have the right mechanics to back it up. But both of these games didn't reward that wandering in any way, shape, or form, in any meaningful way. Getting lost, I think, is a core part of being in a Metroidvania game. But being lost with no substance or without any kind of, discovery, it can get really tiresome.
it's a fine line, or maybe no, it's a blurry line. There's some sort of line between something being tedious and something being rewarding when it comes to exploration.
Well, I think it literally is just how much you reward the player.
Now, to answer Retrogvania's question, the two games that I did play that recently that felt too vast, both had maps. If they didn't have maps, I would call them literally unplayable because, when you have a huge, just gigantic area that you're supposed to navigate, that one of the problems with it and one of the reasons why it felt so unfulfilling is because it did feel so samey. If it didn't have a map on top of that, the amount of time it would have taken me to reorient myself, I don't know, it just wouldn't have been. I would have done it, but it probably would have gotten an even lower score than I gave it.
Speaking of maps, this game does something kind of interesting with them, where each basically room has a thing that you have to destroy, and if you do, then it unlocks the map for that entire room.
I like that idea. Aram's Afterlife did that. 8 Doors Aram's Afterlife had another interesting way of doing maps. That's kind of the carnivorous thing from Hollow Knight. But in Aram's Afterlife, they made the map like a blocky and undefined, I guess. Like you knew you were in this section of the map, but you didn't know exactly where in that section you were. And then when you upgrade your map with the carnivorous analog, the Hollow Knight cartographer character, the details of the map were all filled in at that point, which I thought was a really interesting way of kind of stealing Hollow Knight's idea but putting a twist on it.
Well, open world games have done a similar thing with their maps for a while, where usually you have a tower or a similar landmark that unlocks the map for that area.
Yeah, that's neat. It's always good to have things that make the player feel like they've accomplished something with their exploration. And there's lots of ways that you could do that. And I think that those towers are a creative way of giving a mechanical benefit to it.
Towers are fine, though. I would say they can feel a bit empty, considering how many of them there can be in some games and how they're all the same thing.
Yeah, it depends on the game. I think Breath of the Wild did a great job making it. I'm gonna move the whoops.
Yeah.
Apparently the gameplay is. Sorry, everybody, for shaking the camera there. I meant to move.
You just got excited. It happens.
I meant to move this stream chat so that you could actually see it, since the hub was kind of covering it up. That's one nice thing about doing pre-recorded gameplay and not being the one playing, is that I have control over that while the stream is going.
You can shake the screen for
Yeah,
emphasis.
I can make everybody sick.
Like this game doesn't have enough screen shake.
But yeah, Breath of the Wild made every tower feel like a dungeon in a way, kind of a mini dungeon. But that's a completely different subject. We don't want to get talking about Breath of the Wild for an hour. So our first topic we had for today was skill trees, which actually relates to the Lamp Chronicle, right, Caldrath?
Yeah, there's a skill tree. I mentioned that the normal movement upgrades are in the skill tree.
I still think that's an interesting idea. What are you going to say, Master?
Wouldn't it be great if he just conveniently opened the skill tree in this pre-recorded gameplay?
I thought about interjecting and interrupting when he did open the skill tree and just being like, "Look, skill trees, start the conversation," but it didn't work out that way.
And we're not gonna see it again for a while until I go back to town, which is gonna be a long time.
But I like the idea of skill or movement upgrades in the skill trees. But I think it has to be required, otherwise it's not a Metroidvania, right? But putting the double jump in there, wouldn't it be interesting if you had a choice between double jump or the green block from Allah's Awakening, or a high jump of some kind type thing?
Well, I think the
Pretty sure-
bubble would be the closer analog.
What's that?
The bubble would probably be the closer.
Yeah, the
analog.
bubble. Yeah, something like that. A bubble, or maybe like rush coil type thing. Maybe, I don't know.
I may be wrong, but I think its name eludes me, but it's the Metroidvania with roguelike elements that had the swarm mechanic that people didn't like.
Sundered.
Sundered. Doesn't it do something similar to that?
It does,
Where you have a choice
actually.
between two upgrades.
Yeah, that's true. That does have that. Now,
I mean, it's the same upgrade. It's just different variations of it. I
yeah.
guess I did go back to town. Here's
So you got all the same upgrades, but you had a choice between upgrading that upgrade, or you could upgrade your skill tree, and those are your two choices.
Oh.
And they both had their benefits and drawbacks, and each one affected the ending too. In my opinion, the skill tree was the better option for both aspects, but
well, Sundered also had the thing where you could fill out the entire skill tree by
Yeah.
the time you beat the game.
yes. And I think that was kind of the point. I don't know. I like Sundered. I know that everybody likes Sundered, but I enjoyed playing it. It was a good co-op game.
There's a lot of good things about Sundered, and then there's a bunch of things that are not so good about Sundered.
Yeah.
So it's a good example game.
I feel like Sundered, the addition of co-op kind of mutes some of its flaws, because its flaws could be filled in with conversation with the person you're playing with, which makes it's good to have that in a co-op game. As a single player game, I could see it getting very tedious and boring, but I think it makes the perfect it's the perfect combination of elements, in my opinion, that make a co-op game fun. Which is basically how I reviewed it. I suggest playing that game as a co-op game if you have the opportunity. I don't think it can be played online unless you're playing with the laggy Steam Play Together thing, remote play together.
I wonder how many people actually played it co-op, because I played it single player.
If a game has co-op, I try to play it co-op so I can review it. for that element because I think that that's a selling point. But I don't know. You're talking to somebody who has. I don't know how many other people have.
Has co-op ever made a game worse?
No. Some games have had really bad co-op, but I mean, I wouldn't take it away.
You could maybe say that Chippendale's Rescue Rangers was worse for the co-op.
Are you kidding me? That's the best thing about that game.
It's fun, but it makes it nearly impossible to beat the game.
Oh man, but it's fun. It's like Battletoads co-op. I actually think Battletoads co-op literally makes the game impossible. Like at one point, because back in the day they used to make games harder because they didn't want you beating it during the rental period when you get it for like Blockbuster Video or whatever. And I guess they turned up the difficulty of Battletoads, but didn't test some of the levels. So one of the levels, you literally can't win because the game moves too fast for two players to get past the racing section.
Oh.
Some games where you have to play co-op are worse sometimes. You know, actually, I think that Resident Evil 5 is a good example of that. I feel like that the co-op took away from that game compared to Resident Evil 4.
Right, but that's comparing Resident Evil 5 to Resident Evil 4.
Sure, but I think that's a fair comparison, right? It is a sequel. You kind of expect it to be at least as good as the previous, right? At least I think that's what people will expect out of sequels usually. So let's talk about Silksong. No, I'm just kidding.
So yeah, I remember in Final Fantasy XI, it reaches a point where it's almost impossible to level up without co-oping. I think there was like some classes that you could technically level up. Oh yeah, this is where my controller disconnected.
I'll move over to the next video real quick.
Yeah.
All right, so reboot for the controller problem.
In Final Fantasy XI, there were like a couple classes that were soloable, but it was like excruciatingly slow.
Oh, I had heard that about Final Fantasy XI.
That's
an MMORPG, though. I feel like. Anyway, keep going. I'll share my thoughts on that in a second. But
well, yeah, like so there was like 2 classes out of like I don't know, like 10 classes that you could level up solo, and for the rest of the game, you just had to like matchmake with people or find friend or have friends that you were playing with, or you just could not progress in the game.
So Final Fantasy XIV basically goes to the opposite extreme, where there is a major portion of the game. I'm not going to say the majority because there's so much you can do in that game that how you spend your time could be divided in so many ways. But the main story quest is basically a requirement to access all of the content in the game. And so much of it, you cannot have other people with you. And it confused the heck out of me. I'm like, why am I playing a massively multiplayer online game so that I can play Final Fantasy on the side? Like,
Yeah.
Like, why can't I bring my friends in on this? It confused me. It kind of annoyed me. But in general, I feel like the MMOs are a genre that I just don't mesh with very well. So Metroidvania mentioned about co-op that it's terrible when you play it solo and you have an AI controlling the co-op partner, or if there's puzzles you can't solve without the co-op partner. And yeah, I agree. If you have to have the co-op partner, the AI is never good. I don't know why.
So there, like the new God of War did a decent job with the puzzles where you had to have your like son help you out.
Yeah, but that game wasn't designed as a co-op game, right? That's completely single player. That's more like Ashley from Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
Or
I think the big dividing line is like whether your AI co-op partner can make you fail.
Yes, and usually when another player can control it, the answer is yes to that. Speaking of bad co-op, Time Spinner. Basically, so you have your familiar. Who hasn't played Time Spinner? You haven't played Time Spinner, Master?
I have not. I've never heard someone mention that game having co-op before.
Yeah, it has co-op.
I did not know either, and I 100% of that game.
Okay, so imagine if in Symphony of the Night you unlock the sword familiar and somebody could pick up a second controller and control the sword. That is the co-op in Time Spinner. And if that sounds like it wouldn't be that fun, that's basically how it is.
Yeah, those are the worst co-op modes. Some roguelikes, such as Enter the Gungeon and The Binding of Isaac, do the same thing.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, is I don't think that the game is worse for having it in there. Do I recommend you use it? I don't know. It depends on who your second player is. Maybe you have a girlfriend or something who doesn't like video games, who is willing to control the dragon for you. She can't hurt the game, or the second player can't hurt the game, but it's probably boring for anybody who has any video gaming experience.
That's true. There is the more passive Super Mario Galaxy tier
Yeah.
co-op where you just have someone pointing at the screen and collecting whatever the currency is.
The star bits or whatever.
Didn't one of the Zeldas also have co-op that was like that? It seems like a theme with Nintendo to have extremely passive co-op.
I mean, that can be fun to have if you're including a younger person.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think it hurts the game to have stuff like that in there. And I think it's fine that Time Spinner has it. I do not score the game more or less because of it. I think it's kind of neat that it's there. My co-op buddy that I do all the co-op with was bored, but that doesn't mean that the game was bad because of that. Because of the co-op specifically. Oh, he died.
Oh no.
Now he's back.
Dog's just sitting there, watching.
So does the dog collect gear for you, or is it just a pet that you have?
I think it just runs around and follows you around. Does nothing.
You
Interesting.
stole him earlier.
He's a dog thief. Dog thief chronicle.
So would it be beneficial to kill yourself in order to return to town, so you don't have to pay for a scroll?
So that only works if that's the last save point you were at. And I just hadn't unlocked any other save points at this point. I don't know if you didn't notice, but you actually have to repair the save points that you find.
Okay.
And that save point, I didn't have the items to repair it.
Interesting. Oh, I did see that. That's interesting. So, any other thoughts on skill trees? When are skill trees? Is the skill tree in this game good? Does it add to the game, or do you think it would be better if it was removed?
Well, it doesn't look like a tree.
So there's two different views of it.
Skill
When you're
stick.
actually buying the skills, it just has them as books in rows, and then you can actually look at the tree when you're in the normal menu.
I see.
So it's kind of weird.
So is there much of a difference in this case between an actual skill tree and just buying upgrades?
Not really much of a difference. There are requirements, there's prerequisites where you have to get certain ones before you can get others. So that kind of is what makes a skill tree instead of just a list of skills.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Everybody complains about the skill tree where it's just a linear progression thing. I don't know if that's necessarily. So here's the advantage of doing something like that is it lets you look forward to what you have. It's sort of like if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and you're looking at the table that shows you what you get when you level up. You don't have any. Well, you do have choices in Dungeons and Dragons, so maybe that's not the best example. But the things you get to choose from, you don't have a choice in. But it's there, but it's there for you to look at in case you wanted to see.
Well, and third edition forward, when they added feats are basically a skill tree.
Yeah, that's why I was saying that was probably not the best example, but there you go. You got your lamplight. Hey, it's the title of the game. Is that a bear? Like a bear statue in the background? Sitting on the edge of that cliff?
Maybe.
Anyway. But like, I don't know if it's necessarily bad to have your leveling system look like that. It does the act of manually having to go in and select it and buy it. I can see that being a criticism, but I don't know if it did it automatically. I don't think it's any different than just having a leveling system, except that you have the opportunity to put more than just scaled rewards, like more strength or whatever. You could have a double jump or something as part of that.
Sorry, if you were gonna continue there.
No, go ahead.
So I would argue that seeing the skills you haven't yet unlocked ahead of you in the skill tree, that can actually harm the game because it can often be exciting to wonder at what skill you're going to acquire next. But if you just see them all laid out and you know what you're going to get later, maybe they just don't sound that interesting to you and you're less likely to finish the game.
No, that
Yeah,
is an
actually,
argument, but
in 3000 Duel, there was a point where I was like kind of getting bored with the game, and then I like looked at the skill tree and I'm like, okay, there's like a air dash further along. I'll play up until the point that I get the air dash, and then I'm gonna quit. So like, I don't know. The fact that it tells you what is coming can kind of like give you a certain expectation of the game, whether that's positive or negative.
yeah, I think it's just like anything. It depends on how you design it. So, Metroidvania says that it shows what grinding will do for you, like if it unlocks a new ability for being linear. Yeah, I can see what you're saying, Master. It's one of those situations where it just depends on how they design it. I definitely think that is a way that you could do the skill tree, is have it be a mystery. I think even just showing the player the box, though, like, oh, look at this mystery box, I bet you wonder what it's in it, that can have the same effect as showing a person what they're going to get, in the sense that it motivates the player to kind of try and see it through to see what the reward will be.
That's true.
I can see it being really annoying if there's no respec option though, where you like go along and then you get to a point and it's like it shows you the rest of the skill tree and you're like, oh, there's that thing that I really want, but
sure.
now I can never get it.
Sure, I was referring specifically to the linear skill tree, though, that you don't have a choice, you just unlock it as you level up. I've seen that as a criticism, is like, well, that's not a skill tree. I'm like, I agree, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad system. Advertising it as a skill tree, I think that's wrong. That's false advertising, but I don't necessarily think that the design itself is worthy of criticism on its own. But as far as like an actual skill tree with choice, what does that do for a game? I agree that you shouldn't hide the skill tree, especially if you don't have a nice respec option right on the skill tree that you can push anytime you want, that I never saw for the entire game.
What could you possibly be talking about?
That was for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about. That was a criticism I had of Always Awakening until Caldroth pointed out to me that you could respec at any time, and then I felt like an idiot. That it hides what's in the skill tree until you buy the thing before it. So yeah, if respecing is completely available, then I think that hiding any skill tree that does give you, or that you do have a choice with, hiding it can be. I don't really know how that benefits Always Awakening at all. Even with the respec, I don't understand. Like, I think it's kind of important that you know that you can use the skill tree to float on water or ride your bubble indefinitely, like you could in the first game. It feels like information that would be motivating. I don't know. It's another one of those things where I'd like, let's get the developer on here and ask them, say, why did you hide the skill tree? What'd you do that for? Go ahead.
I think there is an important distinction we have not yet made with skill trees, and that is, how do you acquire the skills? you can do it in several ways. You can have grinding XP from enemies, which might be the more common way to do it, or you can have it sort of plot gated behind bosses,
Sure,
or you
it's
can have it gated by items that you have to explore to find.
ultimately all a skill tree is just another reward system, and you can use that however you want. Grinding enemies. I think I've expressed before that I don't really care how they do that. I prefer it when enemies aren't necessarily meaningful, but some people enjoy that RPG aspect, getting rewards out of enemies. In my opinion, in a Metroidvania, the stronger thing to do is to make it be items you find in the game's world.
Well, it's just kind of like the argument of XP in general. One of the things I really like about having XP is that it kind of lets you dynamically adjust the difficulty of the game.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's always a good thing if you don't want the game to be easier and you're forced to because you're automatically leveling up at
Yeah.
Castlevania.
Well, I think that's just a problem with how they're balancing the XP rewards.
Yeah, that's the problem with Castlevania. Not specifically
One of the biggest problems with
leveling up.
any game that adds RPG systems is that people like RPG systems, but nobody wants to do the extensive amount of math it requires to balance an RPG system.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of math. It takes a lot of statistical analysis. It takes a lot of... you can't just throw it in the game and have numbers go up. People like numbers going up. Players do. But you're going to have issues like with Castlevania where, Dracula is the easiest fight in the game. Just because you've leveled up so much by the time you got to him. And that just feels anticlimactic.
Yeah, I've expressed this before. RPG mechanics in Metroidvanias are not, like, in this sense of leveling up, I don't really think they're a good thing most of the time.
I personally
Or
like
skill
it.
trees for that matter.
I personally like it more when it's a exploration based reward. But sometimes that can be just as bad as leveling. Metroid's a lot easier if you find all of the E-tanks. In fact, that's the biggest thing that makes Metroid easier.
Right, that is an effort requirement in a way, and not just a kill the same enemy in the same room for 2 hours requirement.
Sure, and that's one of the reasons why I like it more. Plus, I think exploration is a lot more engaging than killing the same enemy over and over again for 2 hours or whatever. Let's see.
But killing the same enemy over and over again for 2 hours is accessible to everyone. Whereas somebody might not necessarily be able to find all the secrets if they're struggling with the game.
Right, but how easy does the game have to be for them to beat it?
For some people, really easy.
So Melphis Belmont says that they find it especially bland and potentially balance ruining unless there are choices in leveling up, and I agree. It's also more interesting.
The big problem with Castlevania is that you don't generally choose to level up. You're just leveling up by going around the castle doing your thing.
It also completely breaks your immersion and completely ruins the game as a result. So we're going to have a stream where we don't bash Castlevania one of these weeks.
Not with me here.
But by the way, I do like Castlevania. For anybody listening who is on the Castlevania side, I can find things to praise about it. The leveling system isn't one of the things I'll praise, though.
Like Castlevania 64, that doesn't have leveling.
One of the things about the Lamp Chronicles I thought was great was that game was entirely exploration-based rewards. There was no leveling up. So that was kind of a neat feature of that game, different for Castlevania.
Does sound nice. I was gonna go somewhere talking about skill trees, but I forget where it was now.
So I liked it in Aram's Afterlife. I know that some people didn't. I keep calling it Aram's Afterlife. 8 Doors is probably what most people refer to it as. I thought it was kind of neat filling out the skill tree as a reward for the exploration. Like, you had 2 different ways to acquire skill tree points. And it looks like you get fruit in items all the time in this game. It seems like you never really
Yeah.
run out.
Well,
That-
there's a lot of like consumables dropped, but sometimes like certain enemies drop different things, and there is a point where I wind up running out.
That makes sense. I mean, you kind of have to have a little bit of tension there. A reason, or if you feel like you can just drip feed yourself food all the time, then there's no reason not to try to avoid damage.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Alright,
oh, sorry.
I was going to talk about Metroid and how getting more missile tanks doesn't like inherently increase your ability to face stomp all of the enemies. If you're going from like 180 missiles to 200 missiles, it's probably not going to make enough of a difference in a boss fight. Skill makes so much more of a difference where, you have to literally be spamming your missiles nonstop to run out of them at a certain point, and collecting more doesn't really seem to increase your power at that point in the game,
Yes and
because you'd
no.
have to be trying to fail to use that many missiles.
Basically, all it means is that you can miss more often, which can make a difference. Like I sometimes spray and pray bosses when I play Metroid when I have a lot of missiles, and it works. Metroid 2, it's almost required to have a specific number of missiles. I feel like when they started adding super missiles to the game, the dynamic of how much power missiles give you kind of changed from that point forward. And the more super missiles you have, that really does create a power level increase.
Probably just depends on the game. From my understanding, you really don't need that many missiles in Zero Mission, but they're more important in a game like Super Metroid.
Sure. Although in Zero Mission, I mean, I went up to Ridley and shot 6 super missiles into his face after hitting him a couple times with regular missiles, and he just died. But I think that's mostly because Ridley is not very good in that game, and less because the super missiles were the problem.
Maybe. But yeah, so getting like higher ammo capacity is different from doing more damage, is my point.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that keeps Metroid more balanced.
Well, like you said before, it's really the energy tanks that increase your power level.
Yeah. That's the one where you can just kind of go in and face tank the boss if you have enough of it.
Yes, it kind of comes down to you have to do X amount of damage before they do X amount of damage to you, or Y amount of damage to you. And increasing Y means that your rate of dealing X doesn't have to be as high.
Super Metroid, all of your upgrades are mistake mitigation, but avoiding damage, or the damage mitigation, is more important than the ammo mitigation. Especially since in Super Metroid, the charge shots actually end up being almost better than missiles once you get all 3 laser upgrades.
And if you can actually find the charge shot.
Yeah. That only applies when you're playing the randomizer, though.
I think I remember hearing about somebody who never found the charge shot, like in the regular playthrough.
I sometimes walk over it, but I kind of know where it is, so if I forget it, then I can always go back for it. But
it is pretty well marked.
yeah, I don't know, it's in a pretty. You kind of trip over it, and if you don't, then you're just not exploring well enough. I can see.
always forget that it's there. Then it's like, oh yeah, why is this here? It's so weird every time I play.
It's not right in your way, but it's close enough. I think if you explore that whole room when you enter it, then you'll find it. And that's the point of Super Metroid is exploration is what makes you stronger, and that's one of the Metroidvania one of the key draws of the Metroidvania genre.
Yeah, if you've played games before, you're probably conditioned to look for suspicious things. That's probably the most suspicious thing in the game.
Sure. It's on the topic of skill trees and whether it should be experience rewards versus exploration rewards. That's another thing about it is that exploration is not necessarily more meaningful because of the rewards, but the rewards make the exploration feel more meaningful. If that makes any sense.
It does make sense. I
Yeah,
think
like-
that when you get to the point where you're having exploration rewards for your skill tree, you should just put the items in as the reward instead of the XP. I think it makes exploration feel better.
Yeah,
it's
Like,
a
it
question
never
of-
feels good to find XP in Ori as an exploration reward.
It does let you have a choice of what you get, though.
It does. And it lets you do like a linear sequence better, I guess, because you have to find a certain amount of the secrets, say, to get enough XP to get the unlockable, instead of just finding them in a random order.
Yeah, Ori kind of had a combination of both, didn't it? It's kind of like finding
Yeah.
Geo in Hollow Knight. It's not necessarily bad, although it can be bad depending on what you had to buy. And that's really what it comes down to. If you're
Well, Hollow
going,
Knight also had the issue where you could like find a Geo reward and then die and then lose your Geo reward.
oh yeah, well that's the general criticism of Hollow Knight is the death mechanics. It sounds like they're getting rid of that in Silksong. I think the Chief linked something that suggested something along those lines.
Yeah, I think I heard something about that. I'm kind of trying to avoid spoilers for Silksong.
Oh yeah, me too. I don't like actively seek out info, which is people really
Yeah.
want me to do preview stuff, but it's kind of that's one of the reasons why I'm not really into that is because I like to go in as blind as possible when I review something.
I am avoiding spoilers. It's just difficult when I also want, any amount of information on Silksong and it's not there.
So Melphis Belmont says, "Don't die, Caldroth. Solved your problem."
I mean, there's really not that many spoilers on Silksong.
No, there really
or
isn't.
Metroid.
Unfortunately, any spoilers that come out, I'm probably going to find out about it involuntarily just because of what I do. So hopefully it doesn't affect the whole game for me.
Apparently, they're doing like one of the Team Cherry people is doing an interview like Friday or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Friday is when it's happening.
I saw that. Also, what happened to not talking about Silksong earlier?
We're kind of meta talking about Silksong. We're not really talking about the game itself.
The difference of the game, Metroidvania, like nobody was going to spoil 8 Doors for me because nobody was playing it, so it was nice. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
you could have watched my stream.
I could have. Yeah, I try to avoid those, and I'm sorry. I like to support you guys, but
No, don't worry about that.
I did it again. Darn it! Why does it not grab
Samus
the...
dies at the end of Metroid Prime 4.
I want to make sure that Melphis Belmont's notes or comment was shown on the screen. What is it you just said, Master?
Samus dies at the end of Metroid Prime 4.
Oh, I'm sure she will. You know, they could kill Samus. That'd be interesting if they did.
Then they'd have a legitimate excuse for not making any more Metroid games.
Or just bring her back. She's a Metroid zombie now.
Or just go earlier in the timeline.
That's the thing, you already have this ambiguous floating timeline of sorts to where you can just have Samus do adventures and you like there's never gonna they can't run out of time on the timeline.
Yeah, that's the thing about Metroid is I feel like they wrapped up their story really well. Fusion did leave it open enough for a sequel though, but weirdly enough, they haven't like done a sequel to Fusion.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, spoilers are a tough thing.
Do we have anything else to say on skill trees really? Besides that they're bad.
I don't know if we made that conclusion.
There's still a lot of stuff we can talk about with skill trees. Like, I'm sure you have something to say about the like in between nodes.
Oh, I don't know. I actually haven't played very many Metroidvania games that have those. I think the closest thing is Cindered, that had like the in between nodes. And I don't know. Stat increases are fine, interesting, can be. They can also be very bad. But when it comes to something like Sunder, which basically functions like Diablo, I think they're fine.
Yeah, Diablo didn't have them though.
You mean in betweens? Oh, sure.
Yeah.
See, but Diablo also had the stat system on top of that, where Sunder just kind of replaced that with by putting it to the skill tree.
Right.
I don't really have strong opinions on the in-between nodes. I mean, they can help fill out a tree and separate, like, crucial skills. Or you can also, they can feel unfulfilling if you're mostly just collecting them instead of actual interesting things. They be what they be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think it partially depends on whether your game has like easy respecs or not. Like if you can respec your tree fully at any time, then it can get annoying to fill out the whole tree again.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with in-betweens is when you go off in a different direction, or if you don't do the math beforehand, you're traveling off in a direction trying to get something, and then you realize there aren't enough skill points in the entire game to get there. So that's, like you said, having a respec can mitigate that issue. I can see why they would try and put the Metroidvania tag on this game. It certainly kind of has the look and feel of it from a moment-to-moment gameplay standpoint.
Yeah. So if like you watched a trailer for this game, you would think it was a Metroidvania. It's like, oh, it's got a double jump and air dash and non-linear levels.
It's got a
And everything
dog.
like a map.
Dogvania. There's a couple of Dogvanias, actually. I think one of them actually calls itself a Dogvania.
Oh.
The dog is interesting to me. Generally speaking, I don't really like the pets that follow you around. I've never felt like they've added anything to the game.
They don't. There's something else to look at when you're in to help distract you from the bad gameplay.
They can kind of be distracting sometimes, yeah, which may be the point, like you said, but I think one of the biggest things about skill trees is that it's just like shops. Which really, honestly, their shops really aren't that much different than skill trees, except that there isn't any traveling around to get to shop items, except for maybe, this shop sells this and that shop sells that. But I think a good example is of how a leveling system that didn't have meeting is Dandara. You had 4 different choices to spend your salt on when you collected salt from enemies, which was basically like souls. You could upgrade your health, you could upgrade your potion, you could upgrade your energy, or you could upgrade your energy potion. So essentially, you could upgrade your health or energy, because mathematically speaking, your health potion is the same thing as increasing your health, assuming that your health is big enough that it can be healed up to however much potion you had. So it didn't feel like there was any point to having it be a skill tree. They could have put all of those upgrades in the game's world, and I think it would have been more meaningful that way. It didn't change the way you played the game. It was just power increases to your health and mana. If you're going to have a skill tree, I feel like it needs to change the way you play fundamentally. Or at the very least, be something other than 2 stats.
Yeah. A skill tree should give you meaningful choices.
Yes.
I get the impression that people who make skill trees just don't actually attempt to balance their skill trees.
So exactly like XP.
Right.
They just shove stuff in their game because they think it's cool.
Yeah.
And so like XP, Dark Souls death system, skill trees.
You gotta be able to do math if you're gonna be doing that in your game. That's really what it comes down to. Or at the very least, have somebody who can do math take a look at it and add their opinion to it, which I am perfectly happy to do. Unfortunately, I kind of anytime a skill tree comes up in a game and it bothers me, I usually write like 2 paragraphs in my review about it because it just I don't know, that type of analysis is kind of what I do on a daily basis, so it kind of sticks out to me. Yeah,
We'll
Valda's
hire
story.
Amy the next time.
Valda's story is absolutely a good example of a good skill tree. I could play that game I played that game for 42 hours, and I probably could put another 42 hours into it pretty easily just because of how interesting it is to try different builds.
Still haven't played it, but people say it's like the only good example of Metroidvania RPG mechanics.
Oh, you lost all of that money.
Yeah.
I really like it when games don't like let things that drop disappear anymore. Like I think that was originally created as a mechanic because of sprite limitations and hardware limitations. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a reason why you would do it anyway, but I kind of like it when things don't disappear. It's kind of nice.
I agree. It does not feel good to have things just disappear on you. If things don't magically disappear, it feels, it's more immersive.
Sure. And in this particular situation, I don't think that it added anything to the game. He wasn't fighting a monster, which was preventing him from getting those coins. He just fell down. It's not a good reason to lose those coins.
We could just add it to the list of things people put into the games just because.
Yeah, just because people did it in the past.
This is a bit different, but a complaint one of my friends had about Hollow Knight was that when you open chests, the geo would just fly out in random directions, and sometimes you lose some to spikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a legitimate complaint. I think the game gives you enough geo that it doesn't matter that much, but I think that that's fine to complain about. What drives me crazy is in Shovel Knight, when you die and the money bag like floats above a pit that's like impossible to get to. That always bothered me.
Just don't die.
Yeah, always a solution. Honestly, it's not a bad solution. It's just still frustrating.
I remember that happening a few distinct times, especially if you fall down a pit and it's just hovering right there, just out of reach. You know you can't get it, but you just edge closer to the pit, hoping its hitbox is bigger than the bag.
Let me think. Of the games I've played, Valda's Story has probably the most interesting skill tree. Salt and Sanctuary. Who's played Salt and Sanctuary here?
I have, but it's
played
been
it.
a while.
Yeah, same.
I think it's fine. There are things about Salt and Sanctuary skill tree that bother me. I think Salt and Sanctuary has a few balance issues. The biggest one that bothers me is that you have to level up your weapon. Like, you can't equip certain weapons if you don't have, level 3 great swords or whatever. And the problem with that is that a level 2 great sword isn't necessarily worse than a level 3 great sword. So you go to the effort of unlocking the sword, but it's not necessarily an upgrade per se because the game isn't balanced that way. And that's fine because one of the things about Dark Souls is that you can use any weapon and have it be viable, which is kind of a neat thing about it. In my opinion, Salt and Sanctuary would have been better if they didn't have the weapon levels at all and based off of strength or something.
Yeah, Dark Souls does have, like, you can't use every weapon on every character because it has those stat requirements.
Right. But you didn't have to have, level 2 swords to use it or whatever, suggesting that a level 2 sword is always better than a level 1 sword.
I get why people wouldn't like it. I think it's kind of interesting that they did that, even if it's not necessarily good.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily think the idea is bad. I just feel like the implementation was it felt like, I don't know. It felt kind of pointless, I guess. I don't know. Like you go all the way to level 5 swords, and the level 5 sword isn't necessarily better than the level 3 scissor weapon or whatever. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
as rewarding.
I mean, I think just unlocking the new class of weapon is kind of more interesting than if you were just getting something that does more damage.
Yeah.
Like there's the problem of you don't know if it's better or not until you try it out, and then if you realize it's not actually better for you, then you just wasted your points.
I mean, arguably the best hammer in the game is the level 3 hammer because when you buff it, it does the most damage per hit.
See, maybe if you're playing through the game normally, you wouldn't even know this because you just found a
Sure.
pretty good weapon and you used it and it worked.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's one of those balancing things. So anyway, Salt Sanctuary is interesting. I don't think it's bad. I actually kind of like what is that game that is like Salt and Sanctuary that came out recently? Vigil, the Longest
Vigil?
Night. I thought that skill tree wasn't too bad. I think its bigger problem was that some of the weapons just weren't good until you got the skill tree leveled up.
Well, it did have the problem where you had to pick a weapon type. Like it had the separate skill trees for weapon types, and you had to pick one before you'd gotten access to all the weapons. So you had
Yeah.
to like blindly choose which weapon you were going to use.
Yes, that's true. That is a problem. The respecking system was generous in that game, but you did have to find it, and it was in kind of a weird position. But once you found it, that problem was completely mitigated. So I don't know. I thought that one was fine. Bad skill trees. I mean, I mentioned Dandara, but that wasn't really a skill tree. That was more like a Souls-like leveling system. I don't think that Ori's is great. I don't think it's bad per se. You're not going to say anything to that,
You pretty
Master?
much just you kind of make a choice at the beginning, and then you just keep going with it.
I
Like you
actually,
can.
I was playing
Or
on
go
hard
ahead.
mode, so I actually went down the combat tree just to make it so I didn't have to deal with combat so much. But I think the best tree is probably the exploration tree.
Aren't a lot of the things in that tree like not really necessary after you've played it once and know where everything is?
That's true. I think a couple of things in the tree are like that. No, it's not the exploration tree. It's the one that gives you like a double jump or a triple jump or whatever.
Oh, so there's like an exploration tree, a combat
The
tree, and a movement
the
tree.
movement tree, yeah. Since platforming is the primary challenge in the game, it seems like that one's just the best one to do, unless you're just really annoyed with the combat,
Yeah.
which some people really are. Some people really, really hate the combat in that game.
So take a game with a bad skill tree and take those skills and put them in a shop somewhere. Is the game now better?
That's what they did with Ori 2.
Well, did it make or is Ori 2 better?
I'd say its skill tree is better. There's, whether or not Ori 2 as a whole is better is a different discussion, but that's because there's other elements besides just the skill tree. If you took Ori
They
1,
changed too many variables. This isn't a very good experiment.
yeah. So if you took Ori 1 and just moved it into a shop, um, I don't know. One of the things about Ori 2 is that I was able to go and buy. I saved up and bought the triple jump really early on, which was fine. I don't necessarily see anything wrong with that, but if you wanted to make that a final reward type thing, I'm not sure how you would do that in the shop unless the shop like adds more stock. At which point, it's no different than the skill tree period.
Well, you could unlock something in the shop, then still have to buy it.
You mean like if you found like a material out in the world and then brought it to the shopkeep and they're like, oh, I can sell this now.
Something like that. Yeah.
That'd be fine. I can't think of any reason why you would make, other than to take money away from the player, why you wouldn't just give them the item as the exploration reward instead of making you craft it, unless you're trying to establish an interaction with an NPC for story reasons.
If that's the case, then why wouldn't you just have the skill tree item just as an exploration reward?
That's my preferred. Would Ori 2 or would Ori 1 be better if all of the skill tree items were exploration rewards?
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
Probably,
Without
yeah. Especially if they like added more Metroidvania to the world that you could go explore. Maybe. The downside to that is you lose that choice aspect, which is again the main point of the skill tree, because already Ori gives you the experience points, which are sort of like giving you skill tree points as an exploration based reward.
Choice is not always better.
I don't disagree.
So you agree?
In the case of Ori, I kind of like having the choice because, if I played the game again, then I can do something different, like maybe not upgrade combat or whatever. Now, Ori is obviously not the greatest example since that's not like the most dynamic choice ever, but the choice is meaningful in that situation. Of course, Hollow Knight does everything better with the charm system, which is basically like having a choice and the exploration reward because of the finite resource you have for equipping items.
I was waiting for us to get to the charm system.
Yeah.
But the charm system lets you constantly change so your choices aren't as permanently impactful.
Right. It's a little bit like a skill tree, except that instead of restricting the choices based off of an experience system, you restrict it based off of your charm slots.
Yeah.
Which, again, is what Ori 2 did. They replaced the skill tree with a charm-style system. Although Ori 2 allowed you to change those charms anytime you want, whereas a Hollow Knight requires you to go to a bench before you did. Which, again,
I think going to the bench is very reasonable.
I think that's better that way because, well, Ori 2 had the, this is another criticism you could levy against Ori 2, you had the platforming beneficial charms, and then you had more combat beneficial charms. And because you could change it at any time, you could swap them back and forth at any time.
Right, that sounds tedious if you're constantly swapping them around to give you a slight advantage in any given moment. Like,
Yeah.
not to mention
Now-
the bugs you'd probably introduce into your game if you're just quickly pausing and swapping strange interactions.
I didn't run into too many bugs, but the game wasn't so hard that I found myself doing that a lot, but I did do it occasionally.
I mean, like, if you were to take Hollow Knight's charm system and then you just were able to edit it anywhere, there's some weird charms.
Oh, yeah, if you did that in Hollow Knight, it would probably break that game. So Melphis Belmont says, someone on Team Cherry said that they got the idea of the charm system from Paper Mario. So somebody actually said that, and it reminded me from Paper Mario, or it reminded me of Paper Mario. I think I made that comparison in my review when I was making all those comparisons. So there you go, guys. Hollow Knight is a Paper Mario-like.
Paper Mario ripoff.
I totally play Paper Hollow Knight.
Isn't it
What
already
would be
basically
the
paper?
difference?
No. Is that what Bug Fables is?
Yeah, that is. I guess so. Huh? It is bugs and it is Paper Mario, so I guess that is a Paper Hollow Knight. So we've spent most of our time actually talking about skill trees, and we have two other subjects that we want to talk about.
Oh, there's a lot to cover with skill trees.
I think so. I think we could probably go for another half hour with it if we really wanted to. I think if we did, though, we'd probably want to actually pull open a game with the skill trees and kind of criticize them one at a time, which may be something we do in the future. That actually wouldn't be a bad idea. I should install all the games that I have that have skill trees and then open them up and then talk about them individually.
That is a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, we should do that. That's a good idea. So future
Yeah.
stream, everyone. I don't know which one, but we'll do it at some point.
So what was the first game with the skill tree? Like the first one I can think of is Diablo 2.
Diablo 2 is the first one I remember. I don't know if it's the first one, period. There's got to be one from like the 90s. Diablo 2 is like 2000, right? Year 2000?
I was getting close to it. I don't remember.
I want to say it was 2001 or 2000 or 2001 that it came out. I don't know. Maybe it did come out in 1998.
You just reminded me. I forgot. I was going to yell about unnecessarily putting skill trees into every single game, and I almost didn't. I don't like it when games just put like 50 skill trees in there for no reason.
Hey, look, I guessed that exactly. It came out in exactly 2000.
When did Final Fantasy X come out?
Final Fantasy X came out 2001.
Well, Diablo 2 ripoff.
Totally. That's true. Yeah, come to think of it, that's actually pretty close. All right, we're gonna do one more Google search because this will help us, I think. What was the first video game with a skill tree? Origin of skill trees. Civilization, 1980. What? It was so they're saying that Civilization with his tech tree is like a
Yeah.
skill tree. It kind of makes sense.
Kinda, yeah.
But it's not the same thing that. So Giant Bomb's a pretty good website when it comes to this stuff. Let's see. So they cite the Diablo series as well recognized for its use of skill trees. It's probably the Symphony of the Night of the skill trees in the sense that it kind of popularized it. Wasn't necessarily the first, but was the first one that people really. It's the first one we remembered. So yeah, just like Symphony of the Night was the first Metroidvania, Diablo was the first skill tree.
Why would you say that?
That's funny. So yeah, Civilization. Civilization, I actually kind of like that as the first idea or concept of the skill tree. That's interesting to say that it started. It was a board game. I didn't know that. Was it Sid Meier's back then? I'll have to look into this. Not that we're the 4X game review or anything, but
What, Civilization isn't a Metroidvania now?
you could probably make the argument that it has ability upgrades if you want.
You gotta unlock sea travel to get to the
Yeah, there you go.
other areas.
This is super tangential, but I hate when games just affix a person's name to their title.
Oh, sure.
Why is that still a thing?
Something like Civilization, I can kind of understand it. I don't know. It's part of the brand, I guess.
Still got these like Tom Clancy games coming out, just these like generic Ubisoft shooters or whoever's making them now.
Yeah, I wonder how much Tom Clancy actually has a hand in that. But I mean, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, it was totally all about Tony Hawk, right?
Yeah, Tom Clancy died in 2013.
Oh, really? Poor guy.
And I think he only wrote books. Like, did they literally just attach his name for marketing reasons?
So
I
as
need to
far
look
as
this up.
as far as I know, Sid Meier was. Is Sid Meier still alive? Maybe I'm wrong on that. Sid Meier actually responded to that. Why they call it Sid Meier's Civilization and not just Civilization. And he basically said it was the branding aspect. They wanted to make sure it was official. That came from this person. Although since Tom Clancy is dead, how official really is it? Other than they bought his name apparently. Man, can you imagine having your name be so strong that you could just attach it to something even after you're dead, and it apparently gives it meaning?
Professor Q's Metroidvania review.
Yeah, you need to start adding that now, or else it's
So
not gonna be worth anything.
that is 100% intentional that I don't put my name on it. And the reason why is because I don't want a lot of internet reviewers. You're there for the reviewer specifically, whereas I wanted it to be more about the games.
You mean you don't want a cult of personality around you?
No, I don't. I really don't. I know that that's the motivation for some people to view any review is to hear the opinion of that specific person, but I wanted the emphasis to be on the games themselves and not about. You're not here to see me. You're here to see the game.
Don't worry, we'll put your name on everything when you die and we start making reviews.
Except the Professor Q is like a Marvel superhero, and it's probably copyright that I'm using it myself as it is.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that until I Googled it one time. Also, she's female because apparently that's just the way things work. Gosh, I think I looked up Professor Q the Hedgehog, and I think it was female. So yeah, I don't know. AD&D didn't have feats, so Melphus Belmont says that I'm sure that a Diablo skill tree is developed upon AD&D's feats. Second edition didn't have feats. It wasn't until third edition. When did third edition come out?
Weren't there feats in like some sort of like extended rule book?
They had a, I don't know, maybe there was. They had a rule book where you could do like custom classes where you had like a point buy system, which we abused like crazy. You could make a priest character and basically make any class you want with it. It was actually kind of fun. But I don't remember feats until third edition.
Yeah, like I think that it wasn't official until third edition.
Now, the concept of having choices as you level up could have inspired Diablo's skill tree. I'm sure if we did a Google search, somebody will have like an interview where they ask that specific question. And so why skill trees? And then they'll have their inspiration for it. Oh yeah, proficiencies. That's true. Second edition had a proficiency system, but that was mostly for weapons. Come to think of it, actually, they did have things like survival skills and stuff, didn't they? Second edition was kind of a mess. I like second edition a lot, and some people still swear by it, but like it's sometimes some people complain when things are streamlined because it doesn't feel quite the same. I feel like it was good that it got streamlined. I don't know if it was necessarily good that it got streamlined in the way that third edition was streamlined, but I think the streamlining was definitely a good choice. They had a lot of ideas and didn't necessarily have systems to support all of those ideas. So what's with these spiders that just drop down from the ceiling? Like,
I think they're invincible too, so.
Oh gosh. It's
also, like, every area that they're in makes the game super laggy.
Weird.
Maybe that's why they have to get rid of the coins.
Did your dog just break that platform for you?
Yeah, I think so.
So in other words, the dog is just a liability. What the heck?
I mean, it's accurate to real life.
So Melphus Belmont says some of the expansion expanded on the proficiency system. They included special abilities. I guess that was the proto feat system, huh? In either case, I think Diablo 2 did a good job with their skill trees. It basically started a whole new genre.
They did have to like redo the entire skill tree at one point because some of the things were just terrible.
Oh, sure. And then they added the synergies because there was like no reason to level up anything that came before the more powerful abilities originally.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a work in process, but I think that turned out decently. I don't know. We'll find out. Blizzard's releasing the special edition of Diablo 2 soon, right? Or is that already out?
Not sure. I've heard stuff about it. Probably hasn't gotten like released yet.
It's gonna
If
be
it
like
was out, I think there are people who would be ranting about it to
I
me.
was about to say.
So
It's gonna be like WoW Classic, where everybody's gonna play it and be like, "This isn't as good as I remember it."
Yeah, because it wasn't.
Right.
yeah, I'm gonna stick with my modded Diablo.
You mean Path of Exile? Actually, like, what is that game called? Grim Dawn? Is that what it's called?
Ooh, yeah, Grim Dawn's good. Ooh,
Yeah.
Grim Dawn has interesting skill trees.
Yeah, it does
We gotta
actually.
talk about that.
It does have really interesting skill trees. Like, I like that you get. Here's what's cool about Grim Dawn. Um, oh, the Memphis Belmont. This is actually a good segue into the other topic we were going to talk about tonight. Although I don't know if we're going to get to it at this point. Was talking about the platforms hanging in the air and how that's. It doesn't really feel very much like a place when you do stuff like that. But that's something else we could talk about in a minute. But Grim Dawn skill trees. What's cool about Grim Dawn is you can pick two classes. So essentially you're choosing two skill trees, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't played that or seen much on it.
There's also the like the extra zodiac trees. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, they're basically the astrology tree or whatever.
Aren't those tied to exploration?
Yeah, actually they are, which is neat. Yeah, so you have 3
Hmm.
skill trees per character.
I've only played a little bit of Grim Dawn. I need to play more. Yeah, so there's like a bunch of disconnected skill trees floating about the ether, and I think there's certain requirements you need uh, to invest the points, but it's separate from your normal points. And there's also you unlock more of the trees just by there's some sort of exploration tied in there. I think you have to find certain altars, and then those give you more points for unlocking the trees.
So what happens is that you unlock or if you fill out a constellation, you get points that allow you to access other constellations. Is how that works.
Oh,
You can spend a lot of time planning your character, which is fun if you enjoy doing that type of thing. So I thought that the leveling system in Grim Dawn is very smart, and I feel like the gameplay is solid. So definitely recommend it if you like ARPGs.
we could also discuss the giant Path of Exile web that they call a skill tree,
The web of
where you have
lies.
different classes and they all start at different points on a large interconnected tree.
Well, that's obviously just a rip-off of Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, it's a Final Fantasy X ripoff right there. I like that idea too. I generally like the idea of you start as a class, but then you can kind of go in any direction you want. That's always kind of fun. Forcing the multi-class is a great idea. Yeah, I agree. Everything else multi-class is a trade-off. One of the things that was fun to play in D&D was there was I think it was Pathfinder, had a rule in the back where it was called Gestalt classing, where you just picked 2 classes and you leveled up as both classes at the same time. And because of the action economy, it really wasn't like overpowering per se. It just gave you more tools. And it was just kind of a fun way to play. I'm a fighter rogue or whatever. Didn't necessarily break the game because you could only do a certain number of actions on your turn anyway. But it's kind of neat. Neat to try.
This is random. The art in this game kind of looks like a jankier Yoku's. Am I misremembering what Yoku looks like? Or do you see that too?
Kind of a similar setup, I think, for how they did the art. So when you pulled up the map just a little bit earlier, I actually kind of want to rewind. Let's see. Speaking of level design here. Okay, so you died here. It's another fun thing about doing pre-recorded is that we can do this. So right here.
Instant replay.
So you guys can see my mouse, right? I think you guys can see my mouse.
Yes, we can see.
So this is where the save point is, and wasn't the boss like down here or something like that, or
It's in
where?
the lower left corner.
Oh, it was way over here. Oh, you spawned here. Is that correct? Is that where you are?
So, um, yeah,
Yeah. I thought it was up here where you had this zigzag thing. These zigzags.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, you can see my little face icon on the map where I am now, and then like down and then left is where the boss is.
Yeah, these are just
And there really are a lot
time
of
funnels.
zigzags.
Just little time funnels. That's all they are.
Yeah.
Um, but so that's a big long walk back to the boss. Even so, you weren't where I thought you were, but it's still a bit of a long walk back to the boss from
Yeah.
that checkpoint.
And also, I'm completely out of food now, so. And I realized that I can't dodge the certain attacks from the boss without the double jump. So I'm just like, peace, I'm out.
Time to go unlock the double jump.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anytime I see anything like that in the skill tree, like a double jump, I always go straight for that stuff.
Yeah, but I didn't have enough, like the pages.
Sure.
You needed like 10 to unlock it, and I had 5 last time I was there.
Even if you did, if you're going to have that choice, you should not make it so your boss is like nearly impossible without making that choice.
Right.
It's fun to be able to make wrong choices because if everything's the right choice, then it's the point.
Yeah, I don't know.
But also, you know, if you have pretty essential tools like double jumps in your ability tree, I don't like that.
I mean, if you're going to have a choice, you need to. I'm not necessarily saying that every choice needs to be optimal per se, because there is some joy in like breaking the system and finding the most optimal things. Although that it shouldn't be easy to identify the most optimal thing, because that's not fun. But in general, I think if you're going, this is good for the topic of the skill tree. Choices should be trade-offs and opportunity costs. And if you're going to make it so you need something like the double jump, you need to have other alternatives to fill that gap. Like in the case of that boss, I'm not sure what that could be. Like the other example that we had earlier where you could choose between like the Always Awakening bubble versus the double jump. The double jump is just going to be superior because it's so much more useful in combat. You would have to add something to the bubble to make it more appealing for combat. Like maybe it explodes, like it has automatically has the exploding ability. So you could use it more offensively.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did either of you play the new Prey?
I have not yet.
I did some of it. I played a few hours, and I should actually play more of it, but it's beside the point.
Yeah, it also has a skill tree and it has kind of the things that you would use for ability gating in it. Like you can move heavy objects and like open locked doors or something. I don't remember what all of the things were.
I think the thing with that game is that a lot of the things you need abilities for are actually optional. It's just your classic immersive sim, multiple ways to approach a problem.
Yeah.
You can technically get by without having to use them, but you'll miss out on the fun.
But yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is I feel like it'd be neat if a Metroidvania did that, where you had the gating, have the required aspect. In an immersive sim, you can do anything you want and still get by. But I don't know. I like the idea of trade-offs. I like
2D immersive sim sounds hard.
maybe so. I like a robot named Fight and having your 3 different alternatives for solving the same problem.
Does the game randomly pick which one you get?
It does. I just think it would be neat if you had a choice between the three instead.
Sometimes you do end up having multiple tools for the same problem if one tool is also used for something else. Like you maybe you get the lightning gun so it can shoot buttons through walls, but before that you got a different lightning gun that was just for opening lightning doors.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's interesting too, that can happen. Well,
Or like if you're going across a long gap, then an air dash and a double jump would both allow you to do that.
yeah, exactly. That was something interesting about Cathedral is the way that they made you kind of choose which one for a little short part of the game. They made you choose which one you would have equipped, either the double jump or the dash.
Oh yeah, this is where I went back to like almost the very beginning of the game and found the one spell that I could access after I'd already gotten to the boss and been
Nice.
everywhere else.
The spell doesn't look all that good. Is it pretty useful? I guess it's a ranged attack.
So yeah, it's a range attack, and also you can use it at the same time you're swinging your sword. So it kind of like just straight up increases your damage output by a lot.
Oh, that's good then. It doesn't look like it has any kind of casting animation, so I could see that. Well, we're coming up on the 90-minute mark, which we decided. I think that unless we had more we wanted to talk about overtime, that's kind of where we're going to end our streams from going forward. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about? It sounds like this entire stream was about skill trees this time. I guess we'll talk about the other two topics later.
Yeah.
It was only about skill trees, and we promised to talk more about skill trees in the future.
That's true. Yeah, that's. Well, I think the idea of like just pulling open skill trees and kind of reviewing them, because that's the type of detail that you don't necessarily go into, even when you do like a review for the Discord or on the site. I think that's interesting to do. So
I agree. We can have some also some structured, conversations based on those,
yeah,
where we can probably do more than like a general overview that we're doing now.
right, which I think is a neat idea. I think for next time, so next week is going to be our Let's Play week, and I believe that Master is going to play. Is that correct, Master?
Yes.
Wait, he's gonna. I think you usually want to surprise us with a game, right?
Yes, don't tell anyone, or I'll have to kill you.
Okay, he's gonna kill me through the stream. On stream killing.
You've told us where you live.
Have I told you where? I don't even know.
No, Master's told
Oh.
us where he lives.
Oh,
I guess I'll come over there and then you can kill me.
yeah, I'm pretty busy though. We're gonna have to schedule a time.
2 weeks from now, the one idea that we had that you can look forward to is we thought about watching trailers. I still need to look at the legal aspect, like whether or not I can stream a trailer. I don't think there's anything wrong with it since it is technically promotional material, and I know that a lot of channels just take trailers and put them in top tens anyway. It may be a thing where we need to ask permission before we do that, but we thought it would be neat if we looked at trailers and then talked about what was in the trailer for some upcoming games. So that might be something we do 2 weeks from now. Otherwise, we could talk about skill trees again.
Boy.
Oh yeah, one thing I want to point out in this game is, you know how we were talking about how the pets were useless? There is a thing in the skill tree to have it so you can have more pets.
But
Why? Is that just lagging your game work? Apparently this game lags with more than 3 enemies on the screen anyways.
so, Caldrath, I know this is an early access. Would you recommend this game in its current state?
In its current state, I don't think I would recommend this game.
Do you
But it is an early access, so it definitely has potential to get better.
Yeah, overall, it seemed like a decent distraction at the very least. I always love how you can just whack something down like that with just a sword.
Oh yeah, this is also a very annoying thing.
What?
This is the first secret area I've found.
What?
There is nothing here.
Oh.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if I've seen you accomplish anything during this entire... I mean, I haven't really been watching, but...
Well, I got some weapon upgrades. I've explored pretty much the entire map.
It
I
seems
got the one magic spell.
It seems like all you've been doing is leveling up, though. Like, I have no idea what your goal is, what you're trying to accomplish, and whether or not you're accomplishing it.
Yeah.
But again, early access, it's possible that this is just, effectively...
I mean, he also skipped the dialogue,
prototyping.
so maybe
That's
that would
true.
have told us what we're doing.
I read the dialogue when I was playing. Why couldn't you guys keep up?
So, here's the thing about doing anything important with the story with just the dialogue, is that you're going to have a lot of players who don't read it, and then they get to the end and it's like, oh, what was that all about? Like, I don't know. You gotta have other aspects to your game besides just cutscenes and dialogue, I think.
I agree. You need to tell the story through the gameplay and the environment, which that would be a great segue if we still had time.
To art in video games or whatever, art and atmosphere.
Yes.
Or the floating platforms in the air that Melphus Belmont brought up. That was what I was going to talk about, but that is a topic for another time. Maybe we'll talk about that in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll watch trailers, but we'll talk about that in the future. I think it's an interesting subject, just art, games as art, and the role of art in a game. But
Maybe we can just have like a slideshow of paintings instead of gameplay.
maybe we could.
The painting review.
That goes back to. So it's been pretty well established that you can stream gameplay legally pretty well. I don't know about showing people's art. Like, that's another question. I don't know the answer to that.
We'll just use public domain art.
Yeah, I mean, there is the fair use aspect. If we're like reviewing the art, then there's something to that. But I feel like that at the very least we should put some kind of watermark on it so that we're not creating a potential replacement for that person's work. But anyway, not that we'd actually evaluate art.
Just blindly open Google Images, type in Silksong fan art, and see what comes up.
Oh no! Don't you blindly
They search.
do any
They
search.
There's so many times we have to click the right arrow before we have to end the stream.
Oh gosh. Well, anyway, I think that's it for this week. Unless either of you have anything else to add.
Nope.
Surprise game next week. So if you want to see Master suffer, then join in next week.
I'm not necessarily going to be suffering.
When have you not suffered when it's your
Spoilers,
turn?
geez.
I don't know. I guess that might be true depending on what you pick. But I mean, everything you picked has always been you suffering.
Well, what if I want to change things up?
Change things up.
Not suffer. What if I
Was
don't know how much I'm going to suffer?
Was a robot named Fight that bad?
That's
No,
true.
that was a good game.
That was his first stream, though. That was before he established his rapport there. All right, that sounds good. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye.